Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right in to unpack the staggering success, the complex challenges, and the totally hidden contradictions behind the clothes you're wearing right now.
Let's dive into this with a super simple question. Take a second. Literally, just think about the tag on the back of your shirt. Chances are, if you look in your closet today, you're going to find the words "Made in Bangladesh" printed on a whole bunch of those tags. Because woven into those simple cotton threads, well, there's a massive, globally significant story of industrial transformation going on right there. That tiny little tag is part of an industry that hit a jaw-dropping $38.8 billion in export value in 2025. I mean, just pause and think about that scale for a second. We're talking about a sector that directly employs roughly 4 million workers, with millions more in related jobs. It makes up over 80% of Bangladesh's total export earnings. In just 4 decades, they went from exporting practically zero garments to being the world's second-largest apparel exporter, right behind China. Absolutely wild.
Section 1. The Garment Miracle and Perfect Timing.
So how exactly did this nation become such an absolute manufacturing giant? Honestly, it boils down to this incredible mix of global timing and laser-focused domestic policy. Back in 1978, developed countries were actually capping textile exports from big players like South Korea. To get around these quotas, the South Korean company Daewoo partnered with a Bangladeshi firm called Desh Garments, and they trained 130 workers in modern production techniques. And here's a crazy fact for you. Within a year, 115 of those trained workers actually left to start their own export firms. Talk about a chain reaction of entrepreneurship, right? Then you hit 2005. The global quota system ended, which a lot of people thought would just crush Bangladesh. But instead, the industry boomed because they were already so deeply plugged into global supply chains. Later on, the tragic 2013 Rana Plaza disaster forced a massive reckoning and led to huge, much-needed safety reforms. And looking ahead, the country is currently gearing up for its 2026 graduation from least developed country status.
When you look at the sheer, relentless upward trajectory of these exports, it is just staggering, going from a mere $4.8 billion back in 2000 to nearly $39 billion recently. And that's even with global pandemics and dips in global demand. The resilience here is totally undeniable. But, numbers really don't tell the whole story. Section 2. The Sustainability Paradox.
To really get the most out of this explainer, we've got to peel back the curtain and look at the deep structural realities making all this growth possible. On the environmental side of things, you might actually be pretty surprised to learn that Bangladesh is a global leader in green manufacturing. Seriously, they've rapidly built 232 LEED-certified green garment factories as of 2024. They're adopting solar energy right and left, and through programs like the Partnership for Cleaner Textile, they've saved an estimated 20 billion liters of water. Plus, after more than 38,000 safety inspections post-2013, physical safety in these hubs has improved drastically.
But when we flip over to the social side of sustainability, the picture shifts completely. The legal minimum wage was recently set at 12,500 Bangladeshi taka. That's roughly $113 a month. But independent estimates, they show a true living wage should actually be somewhere between 25,000 to 30,000 taka.
So the whole industry is kind of defined by this extreme duality. On one hand, you have these world-class energy intensity metrics and top-tier structural safety. But sitting right next to that, you have structurally suppressed wages. We're seeing massive overtime, with 42% of the workforce logging more than 60 hours a week, and severely limited trade union representation. It's basically a system where global buyers are demanding rock-bottom prices and top-tier compliance at the exact same time, which just completely squeezes the workers in the middle.
Section 3. The Gender Shift. Now, this entire economic miracle, it was largely built by millions of rural women who entered the formal workforce for the very first time, totally reshaping the country's social fabric. But there's a pretty dramatic, unexpected twist happening right now. Historically, women made up a massive 80% of this workforce. Factory work was this huge path to economic independence. Today, though, that initial wave is actually going in reverse. The female employment share has dropped all the way down to just 56%.
The main culprit behind this shift? Automation. As factories upgrade and bring in all this computerized machinery, we are seeing a remasculinization of garment production. Men are predominantly getting recruited for these newer, more technical roles. And meanwhile, the women who do stay, they're hitting a severe glass ceiling. Right now, only 5 to 10% of managers and supervisors in the entire industry are women.
Section 4. The Value Chain Challenge.
And that brings us to a major structural crossroads, which is essentially the problem with sheer scale. Despite generating literally tens of billions of dollars, 70% of Bangladesh's production is still stuck in really basic low-value items. We're talking plain t-shirts, simple trousers, basic sweaters. The industry has totally mastered cutting, making, and trimming, for sure, but it hasn't mastered design, branding, or technical textiles.
Currently, the industry relies heavily on imports. A staggering 98% of the cotton they use is imported. So, to survive the next decade, the data is super clear. The industry has to evolve. They desperately need functional upgrading. They've got to pivot toward original design manufacturing, sustainable fashion, and performance wear. Because if you're out there competing solely on cheap labor, you are just incredibly vulnerable.
Section 5. The future of fashion.
So, mapping out what happens next in this highly volatile future of fashion, the road ahead is definitely filled with hurdles. First up, you have that approaching 2026 graduation from least developed country status, which, hey, is a huge milestone for Bangladesh and its overall economy. But it also means losing special duty-free access to major Western markets. Suddenly, they'll be in fierce, direct competition with highly diversified, logistically efficient giants like Vietnam and India. Throw in rising domestic wages and the constant threat of automation, and that old business model of just being the cheapest option, it's no longer going to cut it. Take logistics, for example. Container dwell times in local ports can literally be double or triple what they are in Vietnam, and that just completely eats into their export competitiveness.
Even with all these massive hurdles, the baseline forecasts actually point to a pretty bright horizon, assuming they take the right steps. Models suggest exports could hit $48.6 billion by 2030, or maybe even top $53 billion in a highly optimistic scenario. But, and this is a massive but, that only happens if the industry successfully climbs up the global value chain, fixes its logistics, and genuinely integrates both environmental and social sustainability right into its core operations.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder the next time you're buying a piece of clothing. We've seen exactly how a global manufacturing powerhouse was built from scratch, completely transforming a nation. But how does an industry built almost entirely on cheap labor and basic assembly successfully reinvent itself for the high-tech, highly automated future of fashion? Can it upgrade its value without leaving behind the very millions of workers who built it in the first place? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the real story behind the products we use every single day.